Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Nicholas Davenport from Mind Body One, and today's episode of Industry Pathology is a little bit different. As you see, we have two other individuals on today's episode. Usually it's just me talking about whatever industry issues I might want to touch, but today we have Priya Ford and Matthew Hood, who both have esteemed credentials and experience in the mental performance industry. So we'll start off just introducing ourselves, and then we'll get right into it. So Priya, you can start off, give some of your background, what you've done, and then Matt, you can go after, and we'll get into it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Nick. So my name is Priya. I have been in the sports psychology world for about 6 years now. I got my undergraduate degree from Appalachian State University and then went to graduate school at the University of Tennessee and got my master's in sport and performance psychology there. And from there, I started working with the military. I have been on the R2 contract for about 6.5 years now. And as a little side quest, I started my own company, my own LLC called Elite Edge in 2022. So I have been my own practitioner on the side, working with athletes, coaches, corporate leaders, and it's been a lot of fun. It's been a fun ride.
Nice. Matt,
hey,
what about you?
My name's Matt. Been in the field for about 10 years. Spent 10 years in the Marine Corps, got out, got my doctorate from University of Western States. Got my CMPC 2021. Been doing tactical. I work with athletes. I primarily focus on, the tactical population. I also have, private practice, my own LLC, where I work with athletes here and there, teams here and there. Definitely a side hustle, not something that I'm putting a lot of effort into. And then recently started a nonprofit, the Tactical Performance Psychology Group, where we're looking to support the tactical military high-risk occupation mental performance consultants a little differently. So excited to get that venture started.
All right, good stuff. And for those who may not know me, because obviously you might have some new eyes, I'm Nicholas Davenport. I'm founder of Mind Body One, which is a multidisciplinary approach. We do things in the cognitive performance realm, strength conditioning, tactical, mental skills consulting, workshops, corporate wellness. So we range a variety of different populations. We lean on using different methodologies. And that's really a big part of why I wanted to do this, because as someone who I actually never even really took the CMPC route to any degree. I didn't really think about it too much. It was something that was always an afterthought that people said, why don't you have it? So having you two on and having me, I think is a good variety of experiences. So with that being said, I want to start with this question then. Since you both hold a CMPC, what would you say about it as being a necessity in this industry, or maybe not, and how has it helped you? So it'd be like a two-parter question. Do you see it as a necessity? And if so, how has it helped you?
I think personally, I haven't seen it as a necessity yet. I do have an interesting experience that happened a while ago. I was going to work with a university swim and diving team and go to a classroom, and there was a presenter in the classroom before me. And I noticed that this presenter was talking to a team about really similar things that I talk about, like mindset, self-talk, all of that good stuff. And so obviously me being me, I was like, okay, I've got to connect with this person, see what's going on. So we connect after he's done and I'm transitioning into the classroom space. And I just asked him, I was like, hey, we talk about a lot of similar things. Like, what's your background? And he had mentioned, oh, I don't have any sports psychology degrees, no credentials. I'm just a former athlete who now works with this team on their mindset. And my jaw metaphorically dropped to the ground, because I was like, wow, this is a moment where I'm starting to realize that anyone can just get into this field and say, hey, because I have some experience, I'm the one to teach you, talk to you, work with you. And that was one moment I was like, all right, this is when CMPC and having some sort of certification and some value behind a certification really does matter. So I think I've changed my perspective. Before that moment, I really was one of those people who was like, I'm not going to get my CMPC. It's not going to help me. I don't see the value of it. But after that moment, I was like, yeah, we need to make sure we have qualified people in this field.
Yeah, I agree. And some people get flack of me saying what I say online sometimes because since I don't hold it, they assume I'm anti CMPC. But for those who don't know, I am a certified non CMPC mentor. So obviously I've invested my time and money to be a mentor. So I must care to some degree. But my scrutiny comes kind of from what you're saying. I can check my biases and say that I'll do my due diligence, even though I don't have it. I have a master's in sports psych. I have a master's in exercise science. I've done over 40 hours in a PsyD program that I end up dropping out of. So I understand not everyone's me. So I respect your point because yes, I did my due diligence, but the world doesn't know that. So when I speak, I think it might come off as screw the CMPC and this doesn't matter. So I definitely agree with your point. There needs to be some kind of checks and balances. And I know, Matt, you definitely have some thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think that CMPC is a foundational certification, right? ASP sells it as the gold standard for mental performance consulting. Sure. They're not stopping some Joe Schmo of creating a mindset certification. They're not keeping somebody else from creating some other mental coach certification, right? There's no shy that anybody that has a pulse, maybe worked in athletes, and we see it in the military side of things all the time. They'll have the experience of the population they work with. They may have had one individual come to them that has a background in sports psychology, and they're like, man, that was amazing. That helped me. I'm not going to be an athlete. I'm not going to be a soldier or service member for the rest of my life, but I can get behind this. I don't need a degree. Wait, what? I'll just teach it. Right? So those individuals are doing more harm to the field than good. Right? If you want to get your CMPC, get your CMPC. If you don't. At the end of the day, are you doing harm, or are you providing the quality services that the people are asking for? We're seeing it. The military it will eventually require it. They will. And we can look at the new president-elect. She's the most senior CEP, CPS in the tactical field. It's coming. People think I'm nuts. It's coming. And then baseball is, making a requirement as well upon hire, right? So I think there's like 100 something, mental performance consultants in baseball. 79, 80 currently have it. It's coming. So I would never deter someone from getting it. It's your choice. If you choose to, get it. A fresh grad student coming out of school, you should get it.
Yeah.
You should get it because your job is good. The entry-level jobs are going to require it. Major League Baseball at some point is going to require it. Speaking to, individuals that higher up the chain of mental performance or hierarchy of mental performance, I think they have their own society. It's getting written in that it is a requirement. I think they have close to 100 consultants that work in Major League Baseball, up and down the divisions or leagues, and about 80 of them have their CMPC. The rest will either need to get it or are currently in the process of getting it, or they'll be looking for a new job. So what I would encourage grad students that just finished, you really need to think about whether you're going to get your CMPC or not. And if you choose to not get it, building your brand, building something that Nicholas has built similar or your own brand, it is a challenge. It's going to take time. Just like getting your CMPC is going to take time. Entry-level positions like the military, like law enforcement, like Major League Baseball, you're going to be required to have your CMPC. So it is starting.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not going to, you have a choice, get it or don't. Your path is your path, and either one is going to be a challenge. So which challenge do you want to go first?
So I would interject on that one because I got 100+ DMs since I've been posting more outwardly about this. And I usually say, don't go the business route. That sounds kind of counterproductive because like, hey, you did it. Because I've had these kids come up to me and say, you're your own boss. You make your own hours. And I laugh and say, yes, I have more bosses now because every contract is a boss. Mm-hmm. Every contract has sub-management. Like with my sheriff's office, one of my sheriff's office I work with, it's so many moving parts. I answer to not just one person. I answer like multiple people in one contract, and I got another contract I got to answer to them. And in the hours I work, yes, I have to set them. I'm at one of my facilities, just where I do all my content. I was here at 7:30 this morning. It's not like I just say I'm gonna sleep to 10 and maybe watch some TV and then hit up my laptop, answer me. Like I actually probably work more than, not probably, I definitely work more than 40 hours a week. Mm-hmm. So if you do the adjustment, I'm probably making not necessarily minimum wage, but you know what I'm saying? Like as an entrepreneur, it starts off like that. Now, fortunately, I'm in a place where I am making more money, but like Matt said, that was a 10-year process. So when it comes to CMPC, like I said earlier, I'm not anti it. I'm just saying, like Matt said, pick your struggle accordingly. My life just came in a way where by the time I got where I'm at, I just said, do I really need it? In the sense of I don't look to work with a direct organization like that. So it doesn't seem something I may want to do as of now, I don't think. But for those who are coming up, that's a good question to pose. And I think that's a segue to the next point of someone asked about how do the hours look, the amount of hours, the type of populations. And I think that kind of helps people decide maybe, do they want to take this route? Because if you can do it the way I did, sure. But I wouldn't say that's the norm. So what type of structure should it look like from hours, the populations you are and aren't allowed to work with? Because I know there's scrutiny on that.
I'll take this one. I don't think there's enough hours. I think that you should be required to get more than 200. Being a former application reviewer, a lot of people would stop at 200. You can log as many as you want, but you only have to log 200. A lot of people stop at 200 because they don't need any more, right? Is 200 enough to provide quality services, right? I think it should be more. I think if we look at licensure, you have to get thousands of hours. Do I think you need thousands of hours for your CMPC? Hell no. Like I don't have time for that. But more than 200, absolutely, right? And that's just my take. I think the bar should be raised as far as how many hours you are required to get.
Well, and we know too, when you raise the bar in terms of hours and how difficult it is to get a credential, then that also increases the quality of the credential and the value of the credential, right? Because you have to put in a lot more work to obtain that credential. And that means that you have to show more experience. You've probably gotten more feedback along the way. So I think that also can help us when we now, like, let's say they did raise the bar, like you're speaking to, Matt, then we can go in and say, hey, this is a lot of work to get your CMPC. Like, this is not just something I went out, did a couple things here and there and got these letters behind my name. So it can only add value. And I think too, back to your original question, Nicholas, the hours are interesting because as someone who primarily is working with service members, when I graduated from grad school, I thought to myself, well, maybe I'll work with athletes in the future. I don't know. I just know I'm going to be working with service members for a while. So I was in the mindset of, I don't need my CMPC then, because that's focused on athletes, that's focused on coaches. That's a different world than what I'm going into. But as I've had more experience, I'm finding there's actually a lot of value in diversifying your clientele, opening doors by having your CMPC. So even though the hours that you need to get right now might not directly align with what you think your career path is going to be, I still think that it's a path worth exploring, just so that you keep your options open. And if we think about, people are graduating from grad school and then immediately going into being a business owner, which being a business owner is extremely challenging. There are so many challenges I was not prepared for. No sports psychology course helped me in terms of the realm of how difficult it is to be a business owner. It's just a different type of world. So if you're the type of person who's going out there and saying, hey, I'm going to start my own business, I'm going to drum up clients because people like me, or I know how to pitch myself, or because I have this workshop that's going to be great. Awesome. But that means you're probably going into this career field without a lot of mentorship. If you didn't get your CMPC, if you didn't start at a job first where you have some sort of built-in mentorship. So I would also consider that if you're graduating and you think I'm going to go straight into being a business owner, just go get a mentor, like have someone help you so you can make sure you're doing your best.
Mm-hmm.
This past Monday's episode of Industry Pathology, I was talking about the law firm approach to this industry. And this is just a suggestion, because I have a client, he's an Olympic hopeful for Team Israel, and he's a lawyer by trade, and he quit that to basically train for his dream. But basically, I asked this question, like, when you graduate from law school, do you immediately start your own practice? Like, no, I worked for a firm for about 2 years or so. And I think that approach, because like you said, the business side of this isn't talked about. Every intern I've had says we never learn about business. And I get it. Most of your professors aren't business owners, they're academics, or maybe they're consultants or both, but they're usually not business owners per se, like the true essence. Like me, 100% of my revenue comes from MindBody1. I make no money elsewhere. But basically, my point is they're not taught these methods. But in a law firm, you work for XYZ law firm. You're one of maybe 10, 20 lawyers, and then there's levels to it. Now you have the freedom or option to grow in that firm and get more experience and more money, or you get to work and learn and get clientele that you probably wouldn't have got if you just started on your own fresh out the gate. Because that's what I see in this industry a lot. They'll say, I'm Happy Mind LLC, and I call it name on the door syndrome. Great. You have an LLC, it's registered business. Did you generate revenue? Do you even have a plan to generate revenue? Because me and Matt were talking about this before the call. You can sit there and pitch consulting, box breathing, team building. That's great. I love it. I love all of that. But unfortunately, the industry outside of the practitioners, they don't know this stuff like we do. And I think that's a bias that a lot of up and comers have. So I'll segue this to one of the questions we had from posted on LinkedIn is, how do we now then get these practitioners? Because you said, okay, we could have more mentorship, but how do we actually give them the tools as mentors to be what we need them to be to grow? Because a lot of up and comers, I know we're all about probably the same age realm, the 21-year-old, 22-year-olds who are bright-eyed, bushy tails. How do we get them to this level as mentors?
I think the grad programs have to get better. And I think what you're seeing through the Ask Grad program accreditation is you're going to start seeing more grad programs align with fulfilling the requirements for CMPC. They're going to be required to have CMPC mentors on staff to provide the mentorship. So I think that's a plus to the field, especially those that are looking for their CMPC. I think at the end of the day, when you have that mentorship experience, I think mentorship needs to be looked at what are you bringing? Are you bringing the field to your grad students? I've talked about it to my own my own school. I said, hey, I'll come in and talk to the the students about the military field. I've had 0 responses. If we're going to set grad students up for success, we have to provide them what it's going to be like when they finish. And a lot of the places that they go or have to go is the military route. And if they don't have any experience, whether prior service or any experience at all, it's a culture shock. So it's going to be one of those things where like grad programs have to get better at it.
So I'm gonna run with that culture shock response, because with that, I think I hear this all the time once again from interns is, I didn't know this, I didn't expect this. And there's a question, when Matt comes back, I'll bring it back around, but I want to hear your thoughts of, do you need to have some kind of like, what's the word, skin in the game? So basically, Matt, I'm saying is, to your point of like, they get this shock, whether it's law enforcement, athletes, pro athletes, college, whatever level. Is there a discrepancy of these practitioners that are coming up, or even the current ones who are in the field thriving? Do they have the skin in the game to, like, say, not saying you have to be the elite level, but can you be a person like, say, let's use the military, who's never seen combat, telling someone who's seen combat what to think? Because I work with SWAT guys. I've never had to breach a building. I've thankfully never been shot at. So there's levels that I can only do, right? So where's that trade-off of, I guess my overall question is, getting these practitioners, like you said, ready for the world. Now, granted, you don't say, go enlist for 4 years and then you'll be ready. Like, obviously, that's more than likely not going to be a route they want to take. But how do we get them ready in the sense of consulting when, coming straight out of college, you probably don't have that?
Yeah, that's one thing that I'm trying to help people with. And I actually do speak with my alumni program, University of Tennessee. I speak to the students about my experience with working in this field, both with my company, Elite Edge, and with the military, being on the R2 contract in that program. So really what I see and my philosophy there is just having open and honest conversations. Like when I speak to those classes, I will literally have my planner next to me, because I'm old school and I'm pen to paper. I write everything in my planner, and I open my planner and I say, just so you know, here's a day in the life. Here's what I did yesterday, and here's what I'm doing tomorrow. So I just have open and honest conversations with them of, here's what it would look like if you were in a position like mine, where you have a full-time job working with tactical athletes and service members, and you're trying to, run your own business on the side as well. And I found that to be really successful, because that's the question that keeps coming up is, well, what do you do day to day? What do you do day to day? It's like, they just want to understand, when I transition out of a classroom type setting, and where I'm working with a sports team that my graduate school has provided for me. Well, what does it look like if you're actually a practitioner in this field? So I think we just need to be candid with them. I think we need to give them that practical information, just so they do have that idea, but not necessarily, like, they're just not going to have the experience yet.
Experience comes, like, you're going to, like, you choose your path. The path you choose, you're going to get experience in that, right? I really encourage people, when they start, be humble, especially in the military or law enforcement. If you go in thinking you have all the answers, you're going to be humbled really fast.
Absolutely.
You will be humbled really fast, and you will have no business. You have no business, because they won't want to come see you. So it's really going in with a learning mindset of, I'm new to this. I don't have experience. Can you teach me what you do, how you do it? Can I observe you? That way, then I can see where I can take my skills, my tools, and provide you. And it's hard. That is hard. Like, UWS was online. That is hard to do in that type of environment, in an online environment, right? Like, I had to go find my own clients for my mentorship, right? Which was great. It helped me understand the potential struggle that I was going to have as a business owner, of trying to find clients. But it also, allowed me to open myself up for, I was working with a triathlete. I had no idea what to expect. I knew what skills I could provide, but I was in lieu of helping this individual, I was also learning what triathletes was at. Like, I was training for a triathlon. That was during COVID, and COVID kind of squashed that. I wasn't allowed to do it. But I was training. I wanted to know what the struggle was that they go through training for their game. So I encourage students, grad students, you've got to be humble and understand that you don't have all the answers. And if you go into the tactical field, you will be humbled real quick.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's great. I've worked with so many athletes before where their sport is completely different than mine. I grew up playing soccer and I played volleyball. And then, a couple years ago, I started working with the track and field and cross country team, which is completely different than the worlds that I know. And so a lot of my one-on-one sessions, especially more towards the beginning of working with this team, I would ask a lot of questions like, okay, tell me your event, and then talk to me about what does that event even mean? Like, what do you think are some of the challenges? Like, I'm asking a lot of questions because if I can learn and show that, hey, I don't have all the answers, like Matt said, like there are things that I have to learn, but there's also going to be a time when there is information that I have to give to you as well. So I think taking that collaborative approach of, hey, you know what you know and I know what I know, but now let's build that bridge together. I have found so much success across all different industries leading from that mindset.
Yeah, and this is where I think my non-CMPC approach kind of can, like, I agree with the humble part for sure, because I know getting to where I'm at, I did a lot of free work as I'm building a business that I'm trying to be profitable outside of what I was doing as a student. This is me having a child, having a family to take care of. So no one wants to hear that. And this is where I guess some of my bias comes out too, because I always like to check it. You got to do more than expect it, but expect less in return. Now, I know that sounds backwards when you just spent $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 on a degree. But when I get people who approach me on LinkedIn, like I said, I'm very candid and straightforward. So I'm the Band-Aid that the professors didn't rip off. And it's not to be mean because we're all adults, but it's like, hey, think about this. And I'll tell them X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, if you want to do this, this is what comes with it. Like, let's say, for example, in sport, if a pro athlete gets asked a question by a 12-year-old tennis player, is like, how do I get to Wimbledon? And you're like, okay, you have to do this when you're 8, this when you're 12. And they're like, wait, 8? I want to play with toys. And at 12, you don't go party with your friends when you're in high school or college. When they hear that, they're not going to do it. So when I tell people as a business owner, I say, you got to be ready to do stuff that no one else wants to do. And I think this segues to another question we had of, how do you go beyond those skills? Because obviously we all are equipped with the typical mental skills. And I don't say abandon those, but how do we make this? Because I had someone who asked about making this viable to a company or organization that's going to buy into it. And we just hinge on the fact of you need it. That's not a good sell, right? Mm-hmm. We need a lot of things. We need proper health and food, but guess what? We still eat junk, right? As a society. So needing it is not enough. So how do we go beyond the basics? Like, don't throw away the basics. People think I mean that when they see my methods, like me and Matt talked about this a few weeks ago, but it's like, don't throw away the basics. You need that foundation, and we all have them. But if you want to separate yourself as not even just a business owner, if I'm going to hire you to work for the Navy Special Warfare Group or the Boston Red Sox or the Clemson Tigers, you got to show me something that separates you from the rest versus I know how to do goal setting sessions and mindfulness. So how do you do that or teach that in your own way?
Man, I'm still trying to figure that out. I think that's really hard because, in my mind, there's two different approaches. There's an approach that's extremely broad, and you can say, hey, here is a whole laundry list of different skills and different ways that I can help your organization. And I don't think that's as successful as saying, hey, here are a couple things that I am an expert at, and here's what I focus on. And here, when you hire me, Priya Ford, here's what you're going to look for in your outcomes. Here's the return on investment. You are going to have more confident athletes because I specialize in confidence. You are going to have your athletes completely shift their mindset day to day when they're in practice. So I think if you can target a couple specific areas that organization cares about and wants to see a change in, man, that's where your sales in terms of having your own business can exponentially increase, because no one wants someone to walk in the door and say, I can help you with nutrition or strength and conditioning or athletic training or mental skills performance. Like, what do I go to you for then? You can't be a jack of all trades, so to speak. That doesn't appeal to everybody.
Yeah.
That's my 2 cents.
No, I mean, you threw my trigger word out, jack of all trades, master of none. Reminds me of a, field that I'm not going to throw under a bus on this podcast episode.
Throw it.
I'm interested.
I'm not going to do that.
Can I respond to that a little bit, because I have a workshop. I actually did this at the ASK Regional Conference in Georgia this year. And one of my topics, it was the 7 concepts of, basically, if I was a snapshot of how did Nick Davenport build Mind Body One, I put in the 7 concepts. These are what I frame, because obviously it's more than 7, but for time and catchiness. Mm-hmm. So one of them was, I said, don't be a jack of all trade, be a Joe. And if you ever listen to my podcast or things I do, I love using acronyms. So a jack is just average common knowledge. That means you're trying to be all these things, but you're not really, like you said, master of none, right? But I said, be a Joe of all trades, justifiably optimal experience. And the reason I say that, not just be cliche and have a play on words, but it's because I only talk about what I know. So it's not me, like you said, I'm not trying to be strength coach, nutrition coach, mental coach, cognitive specialist, tactical. Is more so if I could legitimately give you like you said, have that specialty. So it's basically optimizing what you're good at versus just trying to do a million things that you're at most mediocre at. So it's kind of the same premise, but I try to say it in a way of stay in your scope, obviously, but offer more. So that's my answer to that question of how do I go about separating myself? Because a lot of the things I do nowadays, I'm now into app creation. So that's a different can of worms. I'm not saying go create an app. I know some people have and are doing it, but that's a whole can of worms. But a lot of what I've been building, because I've been learning that stuff personally for years, it's a way to implement it and streamline it. But I get that's not going to be everyone. So that's why I like to bring my side of things. If there is someone watching that does see an interest in that, I definitely can help with that. So I think this is a perfect segue to this question, because we're talking about doing multiple things. And I know Matt's going to like this. And I don't see if Priya, what she says. There's a gap, right? On this side, it's the mental skills consultant who's more performance, and I'm using the term performance, whatever that might mean to the person watching. I know there's many ways to look at it. And then there's the clinical side. This is licensure, diagnosis. Now, ASP, and this is where we can start getting into the nitty gritty. I think this is what they came for. Mm-hmm. So ASP obviously veers one way or another, and I'm gonna leave it up to you two to maybe expound on this. So as a professional, one, how do you navigate between that gray area? Because obviously you just don't completely write it off, but obviously there's a limitation. So how do you navigate that area? So that's the first part. And the second part is, from ASP, where is the industry leaning and what does that look like for us if that's where it's going?
I'll take this one first. I think depending on the environment that you work in should determine how skillful you are in what I call playing in that gray area, because you can't ignore the gray area. As a mental performance consultant, I have to be keen on possible clinical barriers, one, so I can provide a possible referral. So I can't ignore the clinical side. But if you look at where I work, not currently, but the environment that I work in, I work with the military. And there are people from all walks of life, traumatic experience to not traumatic experience to combat veteran to Joe straight out of boot camp who's getting yelled at for the first time and, is scared to death. The gray area is there in the military, and you got to get comfortable in it. You have to get comfortable in it, because if the person sitting across from you has clinical signs, if they're not high risk, behavioral health is not going to see them. They're not. And let me throw the disclaimer out there. These are my opinions, not the DOD's or anything. These are my opinions. My opinions based on the experiences that I went through. If they're not suicidal, they're not going to be seen right away. But if we create the environment that these servicemen and women want to come see, I may have to choose my wording wisely and go, hey, this is clinical. I think you really should look at this, but we can still work on this because I'm sure this affects your performance. So I really have to choose my words wisely. But that doesn't mean I have to turn them away. I just have to be very skillful. I have to be skillful, right? And you have to, right? The sports side, at least on the Major League Baseball side, some clubhouses are different. They have a very united front of, hey, we're going to work together. And I think they all do, right? But you may have some overlap. There's some organizations that are very distinct, like, hey, your mental performance, your clinical, if we need you, we'll send them to you, right? If they're more leaning towards us, you will send them to us, right? So every organization does it differently, but like if you don't have some idea of clinical, you're doing yourself one, a disfavor, but you're ultimately hurting the individual or group sitting across from you. Like in my opinion, you have to have some level of clinical, nuance.
Yeah, I agree with what you said. And, also speaking from the military space, there's been those conversations I've had in one-on-one sessions where I'm like, whoa, this is very quickly going outside of my scope of capabilities. And I can recognize that really fast. So that happens where people just completely deter and you're like, wow, this is not performance related. And that's pretty clear to tell, okay, at some point in this conversation, I need to incorporate, here's what I do and here's how I can continue to support you. But also here's the behavioral health office, here's their numbers. I'm very close because I'm embedded in a unit. I'm very close with the other resources like behavioral health, which is outside of the military world is like clinical psychologists. So, I'll go to them directly and say, hey, here's what just happened. I'm working with this service member. I really think you all should reach out to them if that's what we agreed upon in our one-on-one session, all of that. So sometimes it's very clear, this is not my lane. I've had other one-on-one sessions where we're really in that gray area where I'm in my head trying to figure out, okay, is there a potential for some sort of clinical diagnosis here that may be underlying that's not my scope, but wait, is it just that your self-talk is really negative and you're just down on yourself all the time? And so sometimes I even question myself. And I think that's one of the hard parts of our field is we are not clinical psychologists. We do not have training. We should not, in my opinion, be touching that lane because if we try to go into that lane, we can do so much damage. And it's scary for me to think about people who are venturing into that world without the knowledge and capabilities and skill sets that they should have. So I think that's every individual who is practicing, they need to know for themselves, what are my lines? What are my boundaries? When is it getting out of my lane? And what am I going to do in those moments? Pre-plan, how are you going to steer that conversation? What are the words you're going to say? Like Matt was just saying, he's like, I have to be really skillful with my words. Like that could be a delicate state for some people. So I think everyone needs to have a game plan for those situations.
Yeah, I can actually talk about this in real time from the business owner side because there's been numerous incidences where someone came to me for more of the performance side. And since I do, like I said, I had X amount of credits since in my PsyD, so I did learn DSM and all that good stuff, psychopathology. Mm-hmm. And they were telling me things. I'm like, wait a minute. You're worried about this guy throwing 96 miles per hour, but I literally said, does he have ... And they're like, oh yeah, he is. I'm like, yeah, this seems like that needs to be dealt with because they were worried about him getting a D1 scholarship. So obviously money's money, but ethically speaking, and ethics is probably one of the biggest classes you're going to take in any program, is like, yeah, that makes sense. And then the other side of that, I've seen it where I had an intern from many years ago tell me about someone she was working with who isn't a clinician, and the person had a suicide attempt prior to them ever meeting. And the minute she told me that, I'm like, wait, how long ago was it? First and foremost, who was she seeing a clinical? And it was like, well, it was like 6 months ago. I'm like, you should not be working with them, because the conversations were veering into mental health stuff. And it's like from a liability. So these ethical concerns that people harp over, they're real. And like you said, Matt said it with the being able to recognize that. If she knew better, she would have recognized that, versus me having to step in. I have nothing to do with it. I wasn't mentoring her or nothing at that point. But it's like she asked for my 2 cents. And I immediately was like, hey, that's a flag. Like, you should not, because God forbid that person end up successfully taking their own life. Mm-hmm. From a emotional standpoint, it's going to suck. And from a legal standpoint, they're going to say, hey, you were working with her, and now you got a whole can of worms you're not trying to mess with. So that's why I think these conversations we're having about the mental side or mental health side is important, because I think a lot of up and comers, especially, they understand they're not doing that, like Priya said, but they don't look for the things that could negate them working with a client where it's like, I need to step away and refer someone who's more qualified for this. So I think these conversations, this was great. So before we wrap up, this question, it was from someone who texted one of us directly, and it was 2 questions, but I'm going to say them together. It says, where do you think the biggest area for growth in our field is, and what do you think is holding it back, like the field in general? So we'll each go through that one at a time. So what area can we grow more in this field from your perspective? Whatever it may be, it might be something we already touched on, might be something else. And then what is holding us back in your honest opinion?
I mean, the first thing that comes to mind for me in terms of growth in our field is I think we need to embrace creativity. I love creativity and thinking outside the box and not pigeonholing too much. You know, I think it's ironic coming off of this conversation where we just talked about, hey, we have our lanes, stay in our lanes. There's always a time and place for that. But I think, you know, get creative with the clientele, get creative with how you deliver skills, get creative with the books that you're reading, like think outside the box. And I think that's a big area of growth where if we can realize and everyone come to this conclusion that, yes, we make a huge difference in the sporting world, but we also make such a big difference in the tactical population world. There are so many practitioners I know that are making such a big difference in the corporate field. I'm working with leaders who are literally across the world, like leaders from Saudi Arabia have come to trainings that I've been running. Like we are making a really big impact. And I think if more people can expand their thinking and be creative, the options are limitless. The main thing that I think is holding us back, though, is one, people are scared to think outside the box. I think that's going to be present in any industry. That's not unique to our field, but people are scared to step outside the box, even though we teach, you know, push yourself, step outside your comfort zone, all of that. And I think our governing body right now has put specific boxes for us to fit into. And so that can potentially stifle the way that practitioners see their scope of capability and or see how they can challenge themselves and push themselves. So that's my thoughts. I think we need to be more creative, and I think our governing body needs to accept the fact that some of us are influential, making an impact, and we are creative.
No, I definitely agree with the creative side, but Matt, what you got?
No, I think when we look at how we support our people, are we doing it right? Are we doing it to the best of our ability? Right? I spent a lot of time in the military personally. I didn't have these services back when I was in the military. The services are here now. One of the things that I Dude, I absolutely agree with the creativity piece. Is you've got, even as an individual working in on a contract, what am I doing to set myself apart within my team of 6 other CPSs? I took it upon myself through CEUs of collecting CEUs for CMPC, is really teaching myself sleep and how it affects performance. You have all kinds of resources that your wallet will provide. Your wallet will take you as far as you want it to take. You have an opportunity to create yourself for the people that you serve using the creativity, right? I wanted to learn sleep. I taught myself sleep. I went through CEUs to learn about sleep and how it affects the body and performance. And now I'm on a contract that works with a population that absolutely has to sleep good because they fly things 200 knots, 700 knots or more. If they don't sleep good, they're not flying that day. There's loss of resource. There's loss of training. So I took it upon myself to truly learn something that the typical mental performance consultant may not learn. There's nothing that says we can't learn something that may be deemed clinical, right? You can look up insomnia in the DSM-5 and it will tell you exactly what it is. You can look it up in international, things, how to diagnose insomnia. Sleep hygiene, sleep behavior change is literally trying to prevent insomnia and circadian rhythm shifts. That's it. But I can focus on that through sleep. Be creative. And I think that's what also, I'll harp on our governing body as well. I think our governing body is holding us back. I do. I think ASP is not doing what they should to really push the mental performance consultant to the forefront because it's become so clinical based. They're putting so much resources in the clinical side, on the clinical side. We're changing our constitution. We're rewording this, we're rewording that. You have APA. You have the ACA. You have whatever the heck the social workers fall under. You have licensed marriage family therapists. Like, those people can absolutely be a part of our association. Get your CMPC. Get your CMPC so we can talk mental performance. I didn't join ASP. I didn't get my CMPC to be talked to annually at the conference about more clinical things than mental performance things. If I wanted that, I would have went the clinical route. I didn't want to. So I think ASP is holding the mental performance consultant back because they're taking on so many things and not truly looking at, why ASP was created. And that, to me, that's huge disservice to mental performance consultants.
Yeah, real just like that. So I want to say something about that before I get to mine, because it kind of plays onto mine. Because I'm going to actually do something most people won't expect me to say, but I'm going to be devil advocate for ASP in this case. Not saying I agree with it. I agree with what you said, but I'm going to play devil's advocate just because I understand business. And at the end of the day, they need to make money. That's why they have the regional conferences. That's why they have the annual conference. That's why I'm being transparent here because it's my show. Why not? I've been a vendor at the last 2. So I won't get into exact money, but that's a few $1,000s to be a vendor. So these vendors I'm talking to about why didn't they come back 2024 in Vegas? I was there as well. And they told me that this particular company, their app was more about the performance side of psychology, sport performance psychology. They brought on investors. They raised millions of dollars. They had consultants that were like, I forget who they were, but they were high level sports psych. So they put a lot of time and money, and they go to a conference that says it's the Association of Applied Sports Psychology. And then they see how all the attendees were more skewing towards clinical. And it kind of made them feel like that wasn't worth my investment. Now, me, I understood where they're coming from because I paid too. But I guess my point of bringing this all up is I see the both sides of the coin, right? Mm-hmm. I agree with everything Matt said, but at the same time, I understand ASP has to make money. And I say this all the time on my episodes and posts that you got to listen to the market. And sadly, the market far is the organizations. And I think this is a double-edged sword because the organizations do what we kind of tell them because we're the experts, right? So if ASP says do X, Y, Z, the military, baseball, whoever, kind of have to listen to it. But if they acquiesce, because I get as a business owner, I've done this where I've acquiesced to the contractor because I'm trying to make the business. Now, I didn't go out of my bounds or nothing, but it's like, that's why I'm playing slight devil's advocate to them because I understand they're trying to cater to a market where there is more money. It's just what it is. I don't agree with it.
I'm gonna touch on that as well, right? ASP is a tax exempt nonprofit. Where are you putting your money? Where are you putting your money? Because the tactical performance psychology group is also tax exempt. Where's your money going, ASP? That's my question. All right. Is it going to the people running the website, running the day-to-day? Where's the money going? If we're looking at, right, I made the post, $400 for registration. I just talked to a buddy. It's costing him $1,000 to fly from Oklahoma to Montreal. It's going to cost him another $2,000 in room. Where's the value? Where's the true value coming from when we spend thousands of dollars to go to this conference every year to get 12 to 15 plus CEUs? Great, that's fine. Where's the money going? If you're about making money, then I want to see my membership dues drop. I want to see the cost of the conference drop. Because at the end of the day, you're a nonprofit, tax-exempt nonprofit at that. So you shouldn't be making money for a profit. So that there, I'm sorry, I got a little heated there, but that shit pisses me off.
This is the stuff this is where the scrutiny comes from my end. It's the same thing. And I think my 2 cents on that matter, I think is you're right. Like, I'm not going to get into their financials, but it's like if there is money being made, it needs to be put, because I understand vaguely what a nonprofit is. Obviously, you do make revenue, but it's like it wasn't meant to be profitable. So it's like whatever revenue you make needs to go back into the people who work it, the people, like you say, website. But I'm not trying to say corruption or anything. I'm not putting that out there, but it's just like you have a point. If the goal is to further the field, how does that look when the people in the field are getting not gouged? Because at the end of the day, everything costs money. But like you said, 15 CUs, $400, $500 plus travel. You do the math, you're charging like $200 a CEU at that point. Like, so that's expensive, right? Like, and so I guess, that's a lot to take in right there. You got anything on that, Priya?
Well, my thought too is, and I don't know the structure behind ASP as well as Matt does, so he's speaking so much better to that than I can and posing some really great points. My perspective here is the conference worth it in terms of the sessions that are offered? I've submitted so many abstracts that have gotten denied, and I have a lot of friends in the field, their abstracts have gotten denied, and it seems like the people who are in my immediate circle, the people that I want to hear from, the things I want to learn, those are not getting accepted as sessions at ASP. And so that's one of the reasons why I have not prioritized going to any of the conferences, because to Matt's point, when you're spending thousands of dollars and my organization doesn't pay for me to go or anything, why I'm not going to go just to go. I want to learn something. I want to learn the business behind sports psychology. I want to hear from someone who is working with corporate leaders of like, hey, here's the program that I built, or here's how I broke into this industry. Here's what I'm doing, because that's the industry I'm breaking into. I want to hear from more people who are working with service members and tactical athletes of like, hey, here is the latest and greatest when it comes to biofeedback, or, this new research that we're doing. Like, I want to hear from people who can share information that directly impacts me, not just people who are our top researchers who you're going to see their name in every single textbook, or, JASP comes out and you see their names in JASP as well. Like, I want to hear from more diverse populations. I want to hear diverse perspectives. I want to hear from people who are going to share things that it directly impact me. And that's been my biggest gripe with the conference is there's a disconnect, in my opinion, between what is presented at the conference and what's getting accepted and what the people want. There's a gap there that is the big missing gap. And once that gap is closed, that's where I see ASP as an organization is going to grow, because more people are going to get what they want from this organization. And people are going to be promoting ASP more and saying, hey, yes, join ASP. Here's all the really cool things that I learned last year at the conference, on top of all the great connections I made because we came together and we got to meet in person. So once that bridge is gapped, once they figure that out, man, I see ASP completely exploding in a positive way.
So, like I said earlier, we have a lot more, all three of us, similar than different. And my last point with what I expect to grow in this field and what's holding us back is perfectly matched what you just said. So I'm going to talk about an opportunity I had early this year. I got to go to Bentonville, Arkansas, which is the capital of Walmart. Like, their headquarters is there. And it was called the ISVA, the International Sports Vision Association. So I'm not an optometrist. You can say some of the cognitive stuff I do has some carryover, but not a lot, but some. They brought me in and I did a workshop about mental skills. And it looked a lot more like the more routine stuff than my more out-the-box stuff. So they loved it. So they brought in a guy to go speak in front of dozens of top optometrists who work with pro sports teams. Some of them have invented methodology. It was a great experience overall, great people. They took me out to dinner. I loved it. And they brought me in. So going to your point, that's what I think the field needs. We need not say 70%, but maybe 20 to 30% of the conference should have people completely out of our industry applying, like you say, the business, the tactical things that like what Matt said with the sleep, like things that are going to bring value that we're not going to hear because we're good at what we're good at, right? Going back to how we work with our clients. Hey, you're good at hitting, don't work on fielding, or you're good at shooting free throws, don't work on defense. No, work on the stuff you don't do too. So I think that's the biggest room for growth for us is to bring in more individuals that don't necessarily either adjacent to our field or could completely different than our field, but there's some value or carryover. And what I think is holding us back, I think it kind of plays off of that too, is we have these institutions, like you said, with the researchers and whatnot. These up-and-comers that I've talked to, like say I've talked to probably 50, 60 of them on LinkedIn in the last few months. They keep telling me the same thing. And Matt alluded to this too. I was blind to what was coming. I just spent $40,000, $50,000, $60,000, spent 2 years, did all these research papers, did all these internship hours. And now I'm in the field making no money. And 80% of what I learned is only good for theory. So I think what's holding us back is we need to make it our duty where these up-and-come, or just everyone, like needs to do things in these mentorship programs or CMPC, whatever it is, where they have to go to something that's not the same. I can say one of the biggest things that helped my career is that I learned the idea of business through actually talking to people who are either in business, or I had to talk to people to buy into what I'm selling. And that made me good at it. There's no way to learn that anywhere else. So we need to have internships or mentorship hours that make them maybe 10 out of those 200 hours, or maybe 25. That might be a little better. You're doing something that is completely out of this industry to get you, one, uncomfortable with something that you're probably not going to do on your own, and two, give you skill sets that can help build your either business or your skills in other markets, whether you work for MLB, soccer team, military, corporations, because there's so many lanes that we can be used. I know ASP stands for sports psychology, but honestly, I guess this is my main takeaway. I'll leave my rant alone. We're multifaceted. And it doesn't mean you have to be a jack, like I said before, but at least entertain that these skills, and Matt said this, the foundations can go anywhere. Now it's up to you to figure out what makes sense for you. Like if you never worked with cricket or badminton, I'm not saying go pick up cricket because it's a billion people playing it between India, the Caribbean, etc. No, do what makes sense though. So that's my thing. Let's try to like Priya said, let's get out the box.
Mm.
I love it. And, that when you were speaking, Nick, it made me think, whether you're in a salaried position, whether you're a contractor, whether you have your own business, the main thing that I've learned across all of that is sales is a big part of our job. If you do not know how to pitch yourself, if you don't know how to pitch what you do and what we do in this field, if you don't know how to get trainings on the calendar with your military units, with your sports teams, whatever it may be, like, you are not going to be successful. So going back to the idea, we need to have people coming in who might be adjacent to our field, but helping us. Like, we've got to work on sales. That's our big thing. And that's how we show our worth.
Mm-hmm.
Man, that's the clip right there. Cause I definitely say that a lot to my interns and my team. You're always selling in some form. And I even have a friend, he doesn't like to say buy-in. He likes to say ownership. You're still selling. He said, look at it as like a investor, right? They're buying into your company, but they get a little piece of it. Mm-hmm. And that's how he phrased it. And since he told me that was like 2 weeks ago, and I'm like, I like that because it's like, you're still getting the buy-in, but now you give them something back too. So I agree. We got to be able to sell it, whether it's to athletes that we're contracted with, tactical, or if you're like me, it's your only income, definitely you got to sell. Yeah. So I think it was a lot of things. We had questions, we hit them all out, or most of them, I would say, but I think the perspectives was great. Whoever tunes into this, you have two great individuals I brought on that gave very good insight. So with that being said, tell them where you're best to be found. I know social media, some people, that's topic 2. Being better at social media, but another time. So where can they find you guys? I know obviously we all met. Well, I met Matt, I think, through Instagram first, and then we met in person, and then LinkedIn. But me and Priya met through LinkedIn. So obviously social media does matter. So where do they find you? Website, LinkedIn, etc.
Absolutely. Best way to contact me is through LinkedIn. If you just look up my name, Priya Ford, PRIYAFORD, that's a great way. If you want to reach out and have any conversations with me directly, I am so happy to have those conversations. Also, I do have an Instagram page. My Instagram is at elite.edge.llc. So you can also follow me on there, reach out. I am the one who's responding to all the DMs and all of that. So either way, LinkedIn, Instagram, that's a great way to get in contact with me.
Yeah, same.
All right,
LinkedIn's probably the best way. Matthew Hood, EDD, CMPC. Shoot me a message on there. I try and get back as quick as I can. You can also find me on Instagram, Mindful Perform. I'll answer DMs there as well. I just want the best for the field. Right. And we have to think outside the box, but you have to allow the people that are outside the box into the circle so we can discuss what could potentially be working, but also what, can be changed.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So the only way to grow is to push yourself. So that being said, thanks guys for tuning in. And that's our pathology.